Deepika Jain, and welcome back to the second episode of the Decoding with Winfo podcast. Today I'm joined with a special guest, Kateryna.
Hi everyone, my name is Kateryna Tymofeieva. I'm a product manager at PitchBook and a UW alum, and happy to be joining Winfo podcast today.
Happy to have you. So Kateryna, you mentioned you're a UW alum. Could you talk us through your time at UW?
Yeah, I came into UW with kind of intention to study business. So a lot of my early journey at UW was about pursuing business classes. I wanted to apply to Foster, but during that time, one of my friends took Info 200 class, I think. So I ended up taking the same class and really loving it. So I can talk more about my journey with informatics, but that's ultimately what got me into applying and ended up majoring in info.
Yeah, we'd love to listen about your journey in informatics. What led you exactly to pursue? Do you have any advice for info majors who are currently trying to figure out what their niche is?
Yeah, so I think what really drawn me into info, and I'll start by saying, like, before taking Info 200, I had no idea what info classes are really about. But I knew that I liked doing like very entrepreneurial things. That's why ultimately, before, I thought business was for me. But what I liked about info is it really had a focus on creating, like, giving space for new ideas to live.
Yeah.
So I feel like every class encouraged you to do some sort of a group project, and later on we got into like creating something from scratch, like building apps and really almost like simulating what it's like to be in a startup world, like now working in a company that's focusing on private equity and venture capital. I thought like info was a great program to allow students to have space for their ideas and potential to grow.
For sure. Do you remember some of the classes that made the biggest impact on you through your time at UW?
Yeah, I think the one that made the biggest impact was Capstone.
Okay.
So it was later on, and it really was all about like teamwork, and I think it translated really well into working experience now. So like working with people towards a common longer term goal, the fact that it stretched over like 2 quarters for me, I think I really got to dive deeper than other classes into what I'm like in the projects and where I'm drawn into, which like spoiler, product management was the passion, so really was enjoying taking on the role like that in Capstone and other group projects.
For some of our viewers who don't know what exactly Capstone is, could you tell us a little bit more about the program?
Yeah, so Capstone, for as much as I remember, it was one of the info requirements to graduate, and in short, it was a group project that you take on and you can either do your own or be like sponsored by a business or a company here in Seattle, or maybe it was anywhere, but mine was specific. We got a sponsored project with a restaurant here in Seattle, and it's usually like teams of 4 to 5. And your goal is, it's almost like you build a roadmap to how to solve that problem, whether you're doing your own or you're solving a problem for a business. And then over the 2 quarters, there's also like a meetup with your Capstone bigger class where a professor gives you different advices. And at the end, you're presenting it to an audience of, I think, all the sponsors and all the info graduating class, at least how it was for me, like everyone who's doing Capstone. So it was also a good practice of like presenting either your findings or your results, and having that like deadline and milestone to work towards.
For sure, yeah. What were other resources that the iSchool provided you with that you think very well translated to your development in both professionally and personally today?
Yeah, I think for the iSchool, one of the, now remembering like another class I really enjoyed was part of the orientation to informatics, the professionalism class. I thought that was a really good prep, and we had plenty of resources to do like resumes reviews with industry professionals. So now it's really full circle being in the industry and doing those resume reviews with students. I think like that's probably the most helpful things a student can do while prepping for professional journeys is really leveraging those industry connections. I think Winfo Hackathon is another great opportunity, not only to enhance your resume, but also to connect with industry professionals. Again, I didn't do it at my time as student, but now working in the industry, we visited last year's hackathon, which was really fun and I think a great opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. At your time at UW, what extracurriculars or RSOs or events were you involved in here?
Yeah, so there were a couple of different ones. One of them was, I don't know if Foster still does it, but I think there was like an entrepreneurship club.
Okay.
So that was outside of informatics, but while I didn't end up pursuing business major, I was still involved with some of the RSOs at Foster. I think I attended a couple of events. So UW had like a center for product management and a Husky sales club. So really a variety, different.
Yes. And you mentioned the iSchool. Like, do you have any advice for prospective students who are trying to find exactly what they are interested in? How would you go about finding out about opportunities and kind of actually engaging in those?
Yeah, I think the best way to learn like what's for you is doing internships or really anything in practice. I know like scoring internships sometimes can be difficult, especially if you're like early on, maybe a freshman or sophomore as opposed to like junior. But I think really finding the opportunity to try yourselves in different intern jobs or like roles, maybe if you're a part of the club, student organizations, give yourself, maybe if someone's in between like design, software engineer, product manager, try yourself in each of those different roles to figure out what you like doing best and what doesn't feel like. I know I like product manager when like doing what would be considered product manager tasks in a group project, like didn't feel like a chore, but felt like something that I actually was happy to do for the group.
Yeah, and perfect leeway into our next subject. We're going to talk a little bit about your journey through product management. Product management is kind of a huge realm of things, and I think students often don't particularly know exactly what it entails. Could you tell us more about what initially drew you? Obviously, you told us about how it didn't feel like a chore, and then like how did you land your first role in product management?
Yeah, so back to my junior year, I think I was working hard to find an internship, and at that time I didn't really also know like what product management was, or really what, like you asked me the question before, what I wanted to pursue. So I ended up with a project manager internship that summer, and it was still really fun, really good experience, but my mentor at that internship was actually a product manager. So I really found myself like being really interested in our conversations and what my mentor was doing at the company as a product manager. So while I enjoyed my project manager internship, I was like, oh, it feels like maybe this could be more for me. And that's when I also like recognized the pattern, like, oh, I really like doing product manager tasks like road mapping in a group project, like kind of like helping remove obstacles for my group to achieve our goal. So that's, I think after that internship junior year, I realized that I want to apply to full-time product manager roles. And that still also like helped my resume, and I think that's a good example for everyone listening in. You don't have to necessarily have product manager or like design experience if even if you're applying, if you can show that in your previous role there's some applicable learnings, and ultimately you ended up liking that those responsibilities better.
Yeah. How did your informatics curriculum kind of influence your job today as a product manager?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what informatics does really well is prepare you in each, like no matter what path you take, there are required courses, and all of those courses are almost like little tidbits and bits from product management. I mean, there is like SQL class, front-end development class, obviously we have our CS classes too, and some project manager classes, how it was in my time. So I really like enjoyed, for all the required courses that I took, like drawing two parallels of like if I was applying those skills while building like a startup or like helping company launch new feature, like how would I use those skills? And while it's a little bit of everything, I think that's what product managers ultimately do. Like it's not necessarily a deep dive into any specific area, but you kind of need to have the knowledge of everything in between to consult people in those roles and to understand what like my designers and software engineers are talking about.
Yeah, for sure. What are some skills that a good product manager should have?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, communication, both written and verbal communication, are really helpful skills, because what you're doing a lot on your daily basis is following up with different stakeholders, and you're building presentations, so you want to be able to tell a good story, and you're representing a great work that all of your team ultimately does. Like that's a lot of the time falls on you, so you have to be like an advocate for your team. Of engineers, designers, like project managers as well. So communication first skill, I would say like good collaborative, like being able to work well on a team kind of relates to that, but you have to, when making trade-offs, for example, you want to make sure that you're a good listener and a good decision maker, and all of that also comes with being a good, having skills in teamwork. And then lastly, I also would say like good ability to work with data. So in Info, I think that was a great foundation of learning how to like how to work with different data sets, but then as a product manager, a big part of your role is deriving insights from that data.
Yeah.
So.
Going back to your internship, you mentioned it was in project management. Could you tell us a little bit more about the difference between project and product management?
Yeah, really good question. And I think a lot of people also might have this question. And now when I tell people I'm a product manager, they're like, oh, is it the same as a project manager? And it's pretty different. So project management, I would say, is really focusing your work on making sure that the project that you're working on gets done by that deadline, and that everyone, stakeholders at the company, everyone is well informed of how the progress is doing. So you're basically doing a lot of like reporting on the progress, you're connecting with a lot of people, checking in like, hey, like when is this deliverable going to be done? It's very like focused on making sure that the project is done that deadline. And product management is more about defining a solution for specific problems. So it might seem that you're working on a roadmap and you have different product releases that are going on that deadline. It's almost like a little part of project management is in there, but it's way more than that, because you're doing user research in collaboration with your product designer, you're trying to understand the scope of the solution, the problem of the users, you're trying to empathize with whoever is that you're solving for, which are, all of these things are not in scope for project management. So you're ultimately working on solution, but also then execution to get it to that point. So oftentimes if it's a really large project, there will be a project manager and a product manager, but in my experience, a lot of times like product manager, if it's just a feature launch, is all you need to get something done. So it really depends.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Is there any advice you would give to students who are trying to break into the product manager field?
Yeah, an advice I would give is definitely to take advantage of all the UW and Info offered resources. Again, I've been following, after graduating, just following a bit based on LinkedIn, but I think there's a product management center. I think there are resources and Info, like, and Winfo hackathon is a great something to show when you're going through interviews and resumes, like, hey, maybe I took on role of product manager here. And product manager, I know right now is a hard area to break into, because there are like only so many job opportunities for many students who might be interested in this area. So I would also highly recommend looking at different areas that might be related to product manager, that if you know you want to go into it later on, that will allow you to break in that more easily.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for sharing, Kateryna, about these questions regarding product management, UW, and the informatics curriculum. Now we're going to talk a little bit about Kateryna's journey through tech. Could you tell us a little bit about the culture, the company culture where you currently work?
Yeah, so I currently work at PitchBook. I've been there for 2 years now, and it's my first full-time job since graduating. And for those of you who don't know, PitchBook is a company based out of Seattle, and we are basically the data provider for venture capital, private equity, public markets as well. And it's been really fun working there. The company culture is great, and what I specifically enjoy is graduating from Winfo. I felt like I would miss like the continuous learning that I had over the past like 4 or so years. And what I like about PitchBook is they're really big into promoting our learning and development. We have an education stipend, and basically every working quarter I can choose something to learn, and I think it's also improving me as a working professional and as a product manager.
Yeah, definitely. How did you feel with the whole transition, graduation to a full-time role? Did you take some time for yourself? How did they kind of let you ease into the role?
Yeah, good question. And like I work with a lot of students now, whether it's like coffee chats or mentorship, and I always recommend that after you graduate, if you can, definitely take a break for yourself, because that would help us transition a lot from being a student to being a working professional. It's very different, especially when you're a senior in college. I feel like the workload is getting lighter and lighter as you go towards graduation, and it's good to take a break, because otherwise you might be shocked by like the amount of like 5 days, you know, like an office for some or remote. It's a lot of work even when you're just training and learning. So I took a month and traveled around Europe, which was really fun and really cool opportunity, because again, then when you go into working, maybe your vacations are a bit shorter, and it's good to take that break just for yourself. And then in terms of for transition after that is, we're pretty lucky to have a hybrid based model. So I like that part of it, because heads down work, always easy to do at home, but also we have that in-office connection between different teams, whiteboarding, all that stuff. And yeah, I mean, for anyone, students who are worrying about transition to the first full-time job, they're always training, and like at PitchBook we have the whole what's called PitchBook University, which helps with learning about the company, learning about our business goals, and I'm sure it's like that at many other companies, so you don't have to worry about too much coming very prepared. Like definitely don't spend your time like grinding books about whatever role that you're going to before going in, because you will be trained and coached, and it was challenging, but a good transition.
For sure. You mentioned you did an internship before. Like, how did that work that you did translate? How were you able to translate that internship and use it in interviews and potentially help you get the full-time role?
Yeah, good question. So I did an internship, and I did an internship with GoDaddy my junior year, and I think that was a good foundation. Again, really learning what working environment is like, what like working with a manager is like, because it's very different from your time in college when you're working with like professor or a teaching assistant. It's a different type of relationship. So that really helped me get that experience. And I also, at my time during the internship, I tried to make like schedule time for different coffee chats with different people around the company, because it also tells you a little bit more into their story and what it's like. Maybe you can use it to understand what you like best, but also it prepares you for connecting with different people whenever you start your full-time job, because again, it's a very different environment from like being in a class versus being on a team of people, and there are different like adjacent teams of people. So I recommend that whether you're an intern or whether you're someone who's just starting a full-time role. Schedule those coffee chats with people you want to learn more about, because that's also an easy way and to ask any questions that you might be like too afraid to ask your team for some reason.
Yeah, for sure. what are your biggest tips for networking? There's a ton of opportunities that sometimes UW holds, career fairs, panels. How would you go back and go about networking at those kinds of events?
Yeah, good question. I think with networking, it's really important, like, to be intentional. I feel like with UW career fairs, when I was a student, there's always like classes, tests, midterms. Maybe you don't have as much time to prepare for networking, and I mean, like, naturally, maybe you wouldn't have to prepare for it. But I think as a student, there are so many students and few companies that you want to go in kind of prepared with some questions you want to ask. So don't just come up to like the booth and be like, hey, tell me more about like company A, because you can probably find that information online. But I would say, like, be intentional. Like, question about company culture is a really good question to ask anywhere, because that would just give you a glimpse of what it's like working there.
Yeah.
And if you are interested in the company, also be intentional about asking questions like, when do your applications open, and what are you looking for as a full-time, like, new grad, what skills are you looking for, stuff like that. So my advice there is to, if you're going to networking events, which you definitely should, just be intentional about what booth you're coming into and what questions you're asking. So the people who are working there, and now as an industry professional, I can also say, they will remember you more if you show that you prepared some questions specifically for them.
Definitely, yeah. So if you could go back in time to freshman year Kateryna, what advice would you give yourself regarding your journey throughout college?
Yeah, really good question. I think going back to freshman year, and especially at UW, maybe some other schools too, there's a lot of stress and like, who am I gonna be? What am I gonna major in? And just give yourself time. I definitely know that I was stressed. Taking all my business classes that I needed for application and maybe not doing as well in them as I thought. I was like stressed about figuring out like what is my journey and what should I be doing to set myself for success 4 years from now. But I think as a freshman, you should just take it easy and like go out and meet people, learn from different people's stories. Like, definitely still take time to study and do well in your classes, but really just try to take opportunities from the environment that you're in. And then, figure out what it is that you feel motivated coming to like class for, because if you're have an idea in mind, like coming into college, oh, I'm gonna be like business or pre-med or something, and you end up not liking it as much, there are so many opportunities that you have so many different majors, and I definitely enjoyed my time at informatics and all the circumstances that led me to apply.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. Lastly, we want to ask you, what excites you the most about the future of women in tech?
Yeah, that's definitely a great topic, and I think that was also big for me, like majoring in something like tech related for tech jobs and then coming into work full time. I always wanted to look up to more women in leadership, and it's very exciting to see that at least in my company, I know that there are more and more opportunities for women to be more involved with leadership and strategy. I also would say like that's when I interned at GoDaddy, the whole team that I worked with, they were all women, and it was super inspiring just to see the successful stories and what led them to tech. Especially at that time, it was still, like when they were going into workforce, there were a lot of obstacles for women to not only get in tech, but then also to get into leadership, managerial roles. So it was super inspiring to see, and that's when I also knew like I want to eventually be someone who is a leader for other women who are looking up to me.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for being with us here today and answering our questions. We want to end off with a quick little rapid fire round. Okay, what is your favorite Seattle season?
Fall. Definitely fall, especially now, like looking out the window, all the colors are changing. But that type of fall when it's like not raining, but it's like a crisp, sunny, cold, colorful fall colors day.
Definitely. What is a hot take you have about tech or college life?
Tech or college life? Let me think. Hot take. Hot take about college life. You can do, an all-night study session with your friends and still be productive. Yeah.
What is your favorite cafe to get work done at?
At my time at UW, I don't even remember what the name is, but it's a cafe that's like very close to the University of, or like the Ave light rail station. I can't remember what the name is.
Okay.
But in the past years, I lived in South Lake Union, and like Cafe Hagen is like a really cool ambience for working.
What is the best place to catch a sunset in Seattle?
Gasworks, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what is your favorite restaurant in Seattle?
That's a hard question. I'm like a big foodie. I also have a food account on Instagram. But my favorite restaurant, I will say I'll have to give two. One for sushi because it's my favorite food, but Sushi Kashiba is like the best omakase experience, but really expensive but worth it. And then another, I would have to say dumpling the noodle is also really good.
Great. Thank you so much, Kateryna, for answering all of our questions today. It was great to have you. I'm Mihika Jain.
Thank you all. My name is Kateryna. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have any follow-up questions from this interview or from this podcast.